We are extremely pleased to have as our speakers today Compuware Product Manager Spencer Hallman and Software Development Manager Nancy DiFilippo. With that, I'd now like to welcome and hand things over to Spencer.
Thanks, Janet. Just to update, just a little forward before we get into the presentation is that what we're going to do in the presentation today is give you an update on what we've done with ThruPut Manager since Compuware acquired MVS Solutions back in January of 2017. Generally, so we're not going to give you an overview of what ThruPut Manager is and how it works. So you should generally have an understanding of ThruPut Manager for you to understand what the product does. And with that, I'm going to get into the meat of the presentation. So this is going to be sort of a timeline-based presentation. We're going to talk about the, you know or may not know, Compuware comes out with new releases and updates every quarter. And we quickly got the ThruPut Manager on the quarterly release bandwagon back in April. And in April, we came out with TMT 7109, and that added production services groups. And you'll also see, as I go through the presentation, an AE or an SE. So AE stands for Automated Edition, and SE stands for Standard Edition. So some customers are on the Automated Edition, and some customers are on the Standard Edition. And this is the release that it would apply to. So the Production Services Group was added to the Automated Edition. We added something else called QUICKJOBS, which was in the Automated Edition, and also supporting the ThruPut Manager control file in the coupling facility, and that was both an AE and an SE enhancement. So just to dive a little deeper into that, so for production services groups, if you're an Automated Edition customer, you know that there's a single job queue. And in a lot of our sales presentation, we always talk about a single job queue, and every 10 seconds, ThruPut Manager goes through that and reorders the queue based on priority. And what we did in April, we gave you the ability to add a second job queue, and this is the production services job queue. So what you could do is separate your production workload into a separate queue and from your general services job queue. And so the idea there is that you can, if there was a problem with production or you wanted to shut down general services, you could quickly do that without affecting the production workload or affecting the general services workload. We also added QUICKJOBS, and QUICKJOBS was a way to identify a specific job and put it right to the front of the queue. So some of our, I know at Compuware we have some batch jobs that when they kick off, they need to execute immediately, so we don't want them sitting in the queue. So we've identified those as QUICKJOBS. So our Topaz for Total Test has a batch job that's kicked off, and we've identified that as a QUICKJOB, and that gets put right to the front of the queue so it can start executing immediately. Nancy, did I cover everything there pretty much? Or?
Yes. Basically, just to reiterate that the jobs that are identified as QUICKJOBS move to the front of the queue, and they will be selected in the service group that they were classified in. And as was always, if that service group if there's requirements or restrictions on that service group, they would still apply. So this gives you a way of getting the jobs that are in a particular service group to the front of that queue, but still maintain all of the controls that the Automation Edition provides to you.
Cool. And then we also added the control filing in the coupling facility. And I'm going to let you take this because this is really getting into the deep technical details.
As most of you know, or ThruPut Manager customers, the ThruPut Manager control file, we say that is very similar to the JECL checkpoint. And quite some time ago, IBM provided a facility to put the JECL checkpoint into the coupling facility. They recommend that you do it if you're in a multi-axis spool with greater than 4 members. The advantage to that is that you get faster for read operations than if you were actually reading from DASD. And the other advantages is there's a more equitable sharing of access to the checkpoint amongst members. In the DASD version, it's a it's not FIFO. In the control file in the checkpoint in the coupling facility, it's FIFO. So it gives you a better access. So one of our customers some time ago asked us if we would provide support for the control file in the coupling facility, and we did that, and the benefits are outlined as in the JES2 checkpoint. So they're the same. So it's not a requirement. It's just really something there if you want to do it, and it's been provided and is documented in the latest release details for ThruPut Manager.
Thanks, Nancy. And as Nancy stated, that was customer inspired, and if there's enhancements that you would like to see in the product, by all means, please, contact either myself or our technical support group, and we'll take your enhancements and take a look at them, because that's what we want to do. Ultimately, is what you want in the product. So that brings us to July, and this is TMT 7110 for those of you keeping track at home. And that was version 1802. So we rebranded, or we put out a new release, and we called it 1802 to correspond to the Compuware naming standards for our releases, and that was both for AE and SE. So this was sort of the beginning of our Compuwareization of ThruPut Manager. And one of the things that we added here was integration to the Compuware License Management System, or LMS. And that was both for AE and SE. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next couple of slides. We also added the Production Services Group functionality. We expanded that in AE, so there was a little bit more work that we needed to do, and we added that in July. And then we added another neat thing called the Job Action Language, or the JECL compare, and that was for AE and SE. So the Compuware License Management, when we first came out with this back in July, we're going to be in warning mode from July 2017 to January 2018. And again, this is only enabled once you apply that TMT 7110 maintenance. And what we're doing is really, if you don't have LMS installed or a license doesn't exist, we're going to put a warning message out. If you do have LMS installed and you have an expired or an invalid license certificate, the started task will shut down, though. And if a license is expiring within 14 days, you do receive warning messages, and these are written to the syslog. This is a little different than some of our other tools. I know I was a Strobe product manager, and if you would go into Strobe, you might get a message that Strobe was going to time out in 14 days, and you would get a message around that. There's nothing that you really go into with ThruPut Manager, but we do write the message to the link list. The syslog. And then, so starting in January with the maintenance for January, we're going to go into enforcement mode. So it'll be like every other Compuware licensed product, that if LMS isn't there or the license doesn't exist, the product's going to shut down. Again, expired or a valid license will shut down. If there is no LMS, though, we will wait a predetermined amount of time. I think it's 5 or 10 minutes. 8 minutes?
8 minutes.
8 minutes. Nancy's telling me it's 8 minutes. To check to see if LMS is installed or not. And that's important when you get into an IPL, right? So as you IPL, you want to make sure that LMS it comes up, soon after you IPL, so that ThruPut Manager can find it. Again, the enforcement mode is enabled by a PTF in the January maintenance. So starting, at January 1st at midnight, you don't have to worry about ThruPut Manager shutting down if you haven't enabled LMS. It's only once you apply the maintenance from January that we go into enforcement mode. Emergency licenses, are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at go.compuware.com. So if you do need a license, you can get one immediately, regardless of the time of day that you need it. If it is in the middle of the night, the next day somebody will contact you to get you the correct license. But that license, I believe it will be good for a couple of weeks. You may also want to set up some sort of automation, on that message WLM, on a message WLM 590i that tells you that you are in a 14-day countdown, so that you do get some sort of notification that this is occurring. Nancy, is there anything that you want to add to the LMS discussion?
No, I just want to reiterate that it is with the January maintenance. So until you install that maintenance, there is no issue, and that if you are in that countdown period, then you should get your license installed as quickly as possible.
Great. Now the next thing we added was the JECL compare, and it was kind of interesting. This came up today. We had a customer that was making changes to their JECL, and they wanted to see what sort of impact that was going to have on their production JECL. And so what they're able to do is create a secondary JECL. And what happens is that everything occurs as it normally does with the analysis of the job. And so both the primary and the secondary JECL are compared at the same time. Now the primary JECL, again, is going to take precedence over, is the only thing that's really evaluated in terms of what ThruPut Manager is going to do. But the secondary JECL is evaluated, and if there's any differences, we'll write those to an SMF record and also into the sys messages, or both. Is that an option, Nancy? Or?
That's correct. So you can either write it to, you can have the records written to SMF, you can have the information written to the job sys message data set, or both, and that should provide you with the information of what's different.
And if they really wanted to, they could hold jobs that had any differences between the primary and the secondary JECL.
Correct.
And then we do include a utility too, DTM, FSMJ, and this is documented in our manuals, that you can employ to create a report showing the differences. You can create an XML format of that, and you can download that to the PC if you wanted to, and turn that into a PDF. And there's directions for doing this right in the manuals. Anything else that you want to add to that? No. And this is an example of the JECL compare report. Nancy, maybe you can give a little color around this.
Sure.
Very black and white right now.
Sure. When you're comparing the results from your JECL, you usually might want to do something like, I'll test this stream of jobs, or I'll test this job and that job. And so writing the changes to the job sys message works fine for those cases. But you might also want to do a full-blown test where you write all the data to the SMF. So you might have a stream of 1,000 jobs that you typically run and collect all the SMF for that. Then the SMF records for any differences detected will be produced, and through the utility that Spencer talked about, you can produce a report that looks like this. On the left-hand side, on the very far left-hand side, you see the JECL variables that are in the job action language, and in the middle column, you see the primary JECL and what the variable is when the evaluation is from that JECL, and what the variable is when it comes from the secondary JECL. So you can easily identify what is different about these two passes of this job. Because it's for all the jobs, you can readily identify changes that aren't really what you were expecting, and you can better ensure that any changes, the impact that you have for any changes that you do with the JECL are not going to be disruptive to your business.
Excellent. Okay, so let's move on to October. And October brought two big enhancements. One was ZOS 2.3 support, and now it's both for AE and SE. And then we also brought in support with another Compuware product near and dear to my heart, Strobe. So some integration with Strobe. And it was interesting for me, being the product manager, the ZOS 2.3 support, is that it was usually with the Compuware products, like, you know, we have toleration support for the new versions of ZOS and DB2 and QUICKJOBS. And in a lot of cases, it's more just a testing exercise. But when Nancy came to me and talked about the ZOS 2.3 support, I was a little overwhelmed at how much time and effort we put into this. Not in a bad way, in a very good way, because we put a lot of time and effort into the ZOS 2.3 support. And maybe you can give us a little, detail around this, Nancy, what was actually done.
Sure. I'll just quickly touch base on what was added by IBM. So one of the first things that was added was the support for email addresses, and they can be used in the user ID field of the job card. And there was a new notify statement that was added as well. What we did for these cases is in the job action language, you will see these new variables there. So now you can interrogate those new variables and act on them as you might with any other JAL variable. IBM also introduced support for dynamic job sequencing. And that is essentially the before, after, and it can be done with a scheduled JECL statement. ThruPut Manager version 7 customers have had access to job chaining services included, and that provides before, after, and with support. So we've had that for some time. IBM is introducing it today, and the two are independent functions. You wouldn't really want to use both, but if perchance you did, both would function independently. If you did choose to use the IBM's facility, for those customers that are using the Automation Edition, the fact that there were delays as a result of the dynamic job sequencing would be reported in the flower box that's within the job sys messages. The other thing IBM added was initialization deck checking. So what they've allowed you to do is to check what your JES2 parameter initialization statements, whether they're valid or not, such that you're avoiding problems when you go to IPL. We had to ensure that with ThruPut Manager installed, that functionality still worked. And we added some code such that you will get a return code 4 from this process, which indicates there's exits are present. ThruPut Manager has its own command that allows you to verify the ThruPut Manager JES2 initialization statements are valid. The last thing that I'm going to touch upon is the emergency subsystem. IBM provided this to address problem situations caused by resource shortages, such as lack of berths. And any of you who are in the systems area know that it's difficult to fix a resource shortage problem once you're in it if you can't get on to another system to address it. So this was IBM's ability to allowing you to sign on and fix whatever the problem is. Any batch job that is submitted from the emergency subsystem will be considered exempt from ThruPut Manager processing. In addition to this, any ThruPut Manager JES2 JECL statements that are coded are ignored. The only part of processing that is still intact is the DCS contention processing, and that is still in effect in the emergency subsystem environment.
So that was a lot of work that we did.
It was.
And I just wanted you to know that I did go out and test my JCL, and I put my email address in for the user ID, and I quickly found out we were on ZOS 2.2. On the system I tested, it didn't work. So I'm looking forward to that, though. So the other thing that we had in October was integration with Strobe. And when we were having our due diligence calls with the ThruPut Manager customers that were also Compuware customers, we did this under the guise of if you were to see integration between, a partnership between MVS Solutions and Compuware, what would you like to see? What kind of integration would you like to see between, Strobe and ThruPut Manager? And I would say most of the customers had come up with this idea independent of our discussions. So a lot of people came up with this idea of like, hey, being able to put just a command into the JECL to have ThruPut Manager add a strobe measurement request for us automatically. And so we added that. We created a JECL card called /*strobe. And if you put this /*strobe in your JECL, when the job is about to execute, ThruPut Manager will add the measurement request for you automatically. So it'll put an add queued request out there. And the format of it is you put /*strobe space and then either the step name or the program name, how long you want to measure for, or what the session duration of that job step that you want to measure or program you want to measure is, how many samples you want to collect, and an email address. When the job kicks off, in the measurements added, Strobe will automatically measure that job step from beginning to end. And once the job is ended, or the job step is ended, the Strobe or the iStrobe profile will be created for you automatically and sent down to iStrobe. At that point, you'll actually get an email saying that you've successfully measured this job step, and this is the URL that you can click on to get into iStrobe to see it. So I thought that was pretty cool, and that we were able to add it pretty quickly. So that coming up soon, or coming soon now, is January, and I believe the go live date for our January enhancements is sometime around January 2nd, January 4th. Okay. Sometime in, I think it's January, we'll go with January 3rd.
Sure.
I think it's January 4th, though. So we're going to add support. So if you're familiar with ACM, that's our Automated Capacity Management feature in Automated Edition. It's what monitors your rolling 4-hour average and constrains your batch workload depending on where the rolling 4-hour average is compared to the peak that you've set. And so we're adding support for customers that are in a country multiplex pricing situation with IBM. And so we're really excited about that, and we'll give you a little bit more detail on that in the next slide. And then we're also adding a graphical user interface, a GUI, for the ThruPut Manager web that will be coming out as well. So Nancy, you want to give us go into a little bit more detail around what we're doing for country multiplex pricing?
Sure. So IBM has introduced this new pricing methodology, which is designed to include multiple CPCs when calculating the rolling 4-hour average. The SCRT report will be based on the rolling 4-hour average for all CPCs in this multiplex. ThruPut Manager, as Spencer said, already has automated capacity management, which monitors and reacts to the rolling 4-hour average on a single CPC. This support will expand ACM across multiple CPCs. The initial support will have a scope of JECL, which means ACM for CMP can be implemented on any JECL that spans multiple CPCs. You only have to have a single member of that JECL on the CPC in order to take advantage of this new support. We intend on expanding this support to the sysplex level and eventually across sysplexes.
Excellent. Thank you. And coming soon is also the GUI, and this is going to be our initial efforts at helping you visualize batch. And it's going to be a web-based GUI. It's going to get installed like all your other Compuware web-based tools would. It goes into something that we call Compuware Enterprise Services, or CES. So that's the app server that it run in. It gets installed pretty easily. And it's going to help you visualize both your general and production services queue data, identify where your work's getting selected, identify identify specific job information around when that time that job might be selected, if it's delayed, what the reason for the delay is, and what's the rough location in the queue. Also coming would be the rolling 4-hour average support too, and it's showing you, how HCM is reacting to that. So that's going to be coming out sometime in the next 3 weeks to 3 months or 6 months. So it's actually a little secret right now, so we're working on that. But we have showed this to some customers, what we're working on, and they've been pretty excited about it. And so that is what we've done with the product, and I think we've done actually a lot over the last year, and I'm really excited, especially for the GUI. I think it's going to be, you guys are going to really like it, and it really helps people understand, what ThruPut Manager is really doing in the background. Okay, so now it's time for our Q&A period. And there's a couple questions here, and Nancy, let me see if I can go through these and take a quick look. The first question is, will you be supporting containers with ACM?
That's a great question. What our plans are right now is we are reviewing all the available data and we are researching it, but our intent is to provide support for containers in ACM. We don't have any planned date for that, but I believe all the relevant data is supposed to be coming from IBM as of December, I believe.
And this is something that was added, I think, in August, or it was ZOS 2.3, the container pricing. But regardless, it's something that was added in the last 6 months by IBM, and it's something that can help lower your rolling 4-hour average or your SCRT bill to IBM. So anything that's going to save you money with IBM, we're all in on. Okay, next question. Does ThruPut Manager require the use of Compuware's common ParmLib or other Compuware required software? And I think I can handle this one. Right now, the only software that ThruPut Manager requires outside of itself is the LMS, or License Management Subsystem. So at some point, if it makes sense, we may start to employ the common ParmLib in ThruPut Manager. Common ParmLib does help customers with large number of LPARs to deploy software quicker. But right now, we don't have a date or anything around that, so we're still studying that. And then the next one, I think I may have answered this, is will ThruPut Manager start enforcement of the license checking on January 1st at 12:01 a.m.? And the answer there is no. It will only start enforcement once you apply that maintenance, the January maintenance. And the other item that I don't think we talked about this at all, but there is a daily check as well that ThruPut Manager does to make sure that the license key is up to date or is valid and non-expired. And we did make a change. All of our products do check at midnight. We thought with ThruPut Manager it would be better for us to make that check at noon, so that if there is a problem, you did have, we wouldn't be impacting the nightly batch. We would give you a better effort. It would be easier for you to address it at noon than at midnight. So I think that's the end of our questions.